All right, what Christians get wrong about Christianity. That's kind of a spicy title as we kick off this new series. This series really is going to cause us to take a deep look inward and say there's some things that maybe as Christians stereotypically we don't have quite right, but it's also somewhat understandable. I mean, church has been around for a little over 2,000 years, and it's not surprising that over the course of 2,000 years, there's likely been some drift. You know, we live in a cultural context that has all kinds of influences and pressures and all those kinds of things, and if we're not careful, even with the best intentions, we can drift to the place that we miss out on what God originally intended when he launched the church some 2,000 years ago. So every week of the series is going to take a deep look in and to say, how can we course correct back to the way that God originally intended? Now, as I was thinking about this kind of idea, have you ever had a moment that you were so confident you were right about something, and then it comes out you weren't actually right about it at all? Every married dude in the room is like, that happens to me every day, pretty much. I've learned in marriage, I've been married almost 20 years. I've learned in marriage, you're either right or happy in marriage. You can't be both. And so the moments that I think I'm right, I'm actually probably not right. And I usually yield that in order to be happy in my marriage. But there's all kinds of moments that I feel like I'm so right and then come to find out I'm not. What I'm notorious about is when it comes to song lyrics. That I think that I know the lyrics to the songs, and I'm dead wrong so often. Now, I'm not much of a singer. I will never sing on stage. That's not why they give me a microphone, because I'm not a great singer. But at home, I like to yuck it up with my family, and sometimes something reminds me of a song, and I'll belt out a song in my living room, much to the chagrin of my boys. But every now and then, I'll sing these lyrics, and Lindsay will say, "What are you saying?" And I'll tell her the lyrics, and she goes, she's laughing at me. She's like, "Those are not the lyrics to that song." I'm like, they absolutely are the lyrics to the song. So, of course, we'll Google it, we'll look it up. She's always right. I'm always wrong. But this week, I was like, so, Lindsay, tell me, like, the few songs that were, like, the most ridiculous lyrics that I thought. And we came up with a few that I thought I'd share with you. So I asked Mario and Chikon to be out here with me. They're going to sing the lyrics of the actual song, and then I'll share with you what I thought it was along the way. So this first song, for those of you who were alive back in the 80s, there was a band called Bananarama that remade this song called Venus. It goes a little something like this.
Maybe she's got it. Your Venus, I'm your fire, your desire.
You remember this one? Mario had never heard that song in his life until this week. Never heard it. I'm like, I knew this song, right? I thought the lyrics, though, were, "I'm your Venus, I'm your fly of your desire." I was thinking like Venus flytrap. I'm your fly of your desire. It kind of makes some sense, doesn't it? Okay, so I messed that one up. Okay, let's go back another decade before that. There's another song called "I Can See Clearly Now." You remember this song? All right, so Mario, help us out with this one.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way.
Okay, familiar song? You probably know the lyrics. "I can see clearly now, the rain is gone." I thought it was, "I can see clearly now, Lorraine is gone."
I
was like,
now, Lorraine is gone.
It kind of makes sense, right? He was in a bad relationship. She was a little overbearing. Got rid of her. I can see clearly now. Makes sense. Makes sense to me. The worst one, and I don't have an explanation for this one. It's a more recent song. How many remember the Little Nas X and Billy Ray Cyrus? They did a song called "Old Town Road." Remember this a few years back? Nobody remembers this song. Okay, well, it goes a little something like this.
I'm gonna take my horse to the old town road. I'm gonna ride till I can't no more.
The song is called what? Old Town Road. I thought the lyrics were, "I'm gonna take my horse to the hotel room." And Lindsay was like, "To the what?" And I'm like, "To the hotel room." She's like, "Why would you take a horse to a hotel room?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm from Texas. I don't know." The joke was we would ride our horse everywhere, like to school, to the grocery store. Why not take it to the hotel room? I don't know. I messed it up. Everybody give it for Mario and Chikon. Great for these guys. But all that to say, there are moments in life that I'm so confident I've got something right. And in fact, I've got it ridiculously wrong. I think the same can be true even in our own faith journey, that with great confidence we move forward thinking that we're so right about whatever the aspect of our faith is, yet nevertheless, when you compare the way we go about things with what Scripture holds as truth, we realize we've kind of missed our way. We're not exactly the way that God had envisioned it. So this entire series is about taking a deep look within and reorienting our lives back to the way God originally intended. Today we're going to focus on this statement. What Christians sometimes get wrong about Christianity is, I think it's all about me. I think it's all about me. Now, in order to really ground this series in Scripture, which is our truth source that we want to reorient things back to, we're going to read some larger portions of Scripture all through the book of Ephesians. So some church traditions do this. We're going to do this throughout this series. I want to invite you to stand to your feet, and we're actually just going to read the Scripture together. And here's what Ephesians says. Now, you're going to see some highlighted words. If you could read the highlighted words out loud with me, here's what it says. Chapter 4 of Ephesians. Paul writes, "Therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling. For you've been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you've been called to one glorious hope for the future. There's one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father over all, who is over all, in all, and living through all. However, he has given each of us a special gift through the generosity of Christ. That's why the Scriptures say when he ascended to the heights, he led a crowd of captives and gave gifts to his people. Notice that it said he ascended. This clearly means that Christ also descended into our lowly world. The same one who descended is the one who ascended higher than all the heavens, so that he might fill the entire universe with himself. Now these are the gifts Christ gave to the church: the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and to build up the church, the body of Christ. This will continue until we all come to such unity in our faith and knowledge of God's Son that we will be mature in the Lord, measuring to the fullness and complete standard of Christ. Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown with every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with these lies so clever that they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love." That's Ephesians chapter 4. You can have a seat. And so as I think about really what this looks like, again, Paul reorients our lives to remember why the church really existed. And it's not this recognition that I think that it's all about me. It's actually a mindset shift that takes place. Now, the truth is, in our culture, we're this hyper-individualistic culture. Like our culture tells us, live your own truth, do your own thing, be your own person. And almost like this pursuit of individualism, almost this pursuit of total independence. We actually think that's the right way to go, but I would describe it in this way. It's almost like the difference between a thread and a tapestry if our lives were these individual threads. Now, it's kind of great within of itself, but no thread in of itself, by itself, ever makes anything beautiful. But God's design is that each one of our lives, each individual thread, is woven together in such a way that it makes this beautiful, beautiful tapestry. Our lives were never intended to be lived in an individualistic manner. Our lives were never intended to be lived as a thread. Our lives were intended to be woven together as a tapestry. Yet nevertheless, the current movement of our culture is toward more and more of individualism, and at the same time, I would say that's killing us. There's a recent Harvard study that came out that said that we are the loneliest generation in all of human history. We're becoming lonelier and lonelier as we progress. Really quickly, look to somebody on your right and somebody on your left. You kind of see a picture of three people. This same Harvard study suggested that 1 in 3 people reports an intense experience of loneliness. It's actually a little bit more than 1 in 3, 36%. Those percentages go up when it comes to young people who report it at a level of 60%, and in young mothers report it at the level of 50%. And so there's a large percentage of us who report this intense feeling of loneliness. They're people who have needs that they need met, but there's nobody to meet those needs. They have longings to experience, but nobody there to meet those longings. It's not that we're not connected people. This Harvard study suggested that we're the most connected and disconnected generation at the same time. We're the most connected in the sense that we have lots of acquaintances, lots of people in our lives, coworkers, neighbors, those types of things. We're certainly connected digitally to one another, that we've got Facebook friends and Instagram followers and so on and so forth. We're so connected in many ways, yet at the same time, we feel this incredible sense of disconnection. In the sense that most of us, though we have lots and lots of people that we know, there's very few people who really know us on a deep level. Most of us, or at least a large percentage of us, would say we don't actually have a single close friend. And so we're the most connected and we're the most disconnected at the same time. It's in light of that news that the Surgeon General recently came out to say that we're experiencing what he described as a loneliness epidemic, and he said the repercussions are intense. It is increasing our chances of cardiovascular disease. It's increasing our chances of dementia. It is increasing our anxiety, depression, and is actually leading to a shorter lifespan. The toll that it's taking on us is tremendous because God never intended us to live that way. Our lives were a thread, but not a thread that was ever intended to live on its own. That thread was intended to be woven together with other threads to create a beautiful tapestry. And so in order to experience what God originally intended, it's going to require some mindset shifts from us. And I would say the first shift is this. We have to shift from me to we. It's a shift from me to we. Ephesians, this is what we read earlier, chapter 4. I'm going to pick it up at verse 3. It says, make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there's one body and one Spirit, just as you've been called to one glorious hope for the future. There's one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father over all, who is over all, in all, and living through all. And so you get this picture that Paul's creating is, again, you're not just a thread, you're a thread that's intended to be woven together with other threads, that really the goal is about unity together, because even though we have some differences, as followers of Jesus, there's so much that we have in common, that we have one faith, one God, one Lord over all, one baptism, one faith, one community. I mean, there's so much that brings us together. And the beauty when it comes to followers of Jesus is that we were created for one another. Now, the early church knew this. You look at Acts chapter 2, it says they devoted themselves to one another. I mean, they didn't live these individualistic types of lives. They lived in this devoted tapestry to the lives of one another. Now, if you look at the frequency that the early church came together, it's mind-boggling for me. They didn't come together just once a month. They didn't just come together once a week. The early church, Acts chapter 2, they came together daily. They recognized how dependent they were on one another, so much so that they came together daily. Now, I want to push us, maybe challenge us a little bit. The most recent church stats suggested that most people, on average, engage in their church community about 1 in every 4 to 6 weeks. And so we're probably monthly at best on average. And so we tend to engage in a church community when it's convenient to us, right? When we don't have a baseball or soccer tournament, when the weather's not too cold outside. We like it to be a little bit warmer, but not too warm, because if it's too warm, I might make other plans to go do something else. I'll come when I'm not too tired, or when I'm not too busy, or when I wasn't out too late last night, that kind of thing. We tend to engage when it's most convenient. The early church engaged because they recognized their spiritual life was dependent on it. They knew that they could not be spiritually strong, close to God, strong in the eyes of temptation without one another. Their togetherness was critical to them thriving as people. They couldn't imagine a world without them. So I would say this, one of the key differences between the church today and the early church is this. The early church recognized that they needed one another, and they knew it. And today, I would say the church needs one another, but sometimes we forget it. And that's why I would say we make such a big deal about groups around Willow Creek. And we don't make a big deal about groups because it's just another program or we're just trying to get more people engaged into something. We believe in groups because we believe in this principle that God has designed us for our lives to be interwoven with one another. We can't be all that God's created us to be on our own. Our lives have to get interwoven with one another. It's the way that God created us, and that's why groups become such a big deal for us. Now, I know that for some of us, the more we talk about groups, there's a resistance that happens within you. You're like, oh, groups, here we go. Because maybe you're an introvert, and the thought of going to somebody's house or coming to the church and hanging out with a group of strangers, that feels like some sort of small form of torture to you, right? For those of you who are introverts. Or maybe you think about a group and you're like, man, if I show up there, there's going to be somebody weird there. And let me tell you, you're probably right. And if you show up and you don't find somebody who's weird there, there's a chance that you're the person who's weird there. I don't know. The reality of it is, those are very real things. And maybe you'd say, I've even been a part of a group, and it wasn't a great experience. And it's true. Not every group is a great fit for every person. We recognize that. That's part of why we do groups in terms, like these 10-week terms, because it creates a great opportunity for people to come into a group and creates a great opportunity for you to come out of a group. And so even if you've had a bad experience or not a great experience at some point in the past, don't write off all group experiences. I would still say your life, my life, depends on our ability to really integrate our lives in the lives of others. What's fascinating is there's a disproportionate impact for those who actually live with intentionality here. That when I live with intentionality and I interweave my life with the life of somebody else, a small investment leads to a massive outcome in my health, my well-being, the meaning that I find in life, the fulfillment, the satisfaction. It all gets tied in togetherness because God created us to be together. So there's got to be this mind shift that we experience, that we go from me to we. But there's a second mind shift that I would point us to. The second mind shift I'd point us to is this, that we would go from self to service. From self to service. I think about it this way. If you were to say, like, what are churches known for, how would you respond to that? I think for a lot of us, we'd say that the church is known for maybe a charismatic leader, or a church is known for its preaching, or maybe a church is known for its great music, or maybe a church is known for its incredible kids and student programming, that kind of thing. And as much as all of that matters, and as much as we care about making all of that the best it can possibly be, I actually would love for us to be known by something completely different. I would love for us to be known for our radical love for one another and our radical commitment to serve anybody who has a need. I would love for those who don't affiliate with Willow Creek at all, that don't come to this church, they can't even hear about us. I would love for somebody who's not a part of our community to hear about Willow Creek and go, I've heard about those people. I mean, those people are radically loving. Those people are just radically inclusive. Those are people who are willing to serve anybody and everybody, no matter what the need is. I would love to be known for that kind of thing. I think about it this way. It's why I love the things we did like last week in Celebration of Hope. Because Celebration of Hope is an experience where all of us as a community together, we get to experience this mindset shift where it's a shift from self to service. It is not about me. It's about how God might use us collectively to be a force for good in his world. Here's what he says. Going back to Ephesians chapter 4, he says that, however, he has given each one of us a special gift through the generosity of Christ. that he's equipped us, he's empowered us to use that gift in some way. It's from self to serve. And until we live that, we won't experience the fullness of it. This past week, I had the chance to travel with our lead team here to the Cook County Jail. And we got to come alongside of some longtime Willow attendees who served there faithfully week in and week out, and they've been doing it for years. Kurt and Krista Olson have been serving faithfully. Kurt's been around the church for 50 years. They've been serving in the Cook County Jail for a long time, and I've heard about their ministry. I was aware of it, but they invited us to go and experience it with them this week. And so we went into the Cook County Jail with them, to the place that they serve all the time. Now, in the experience while we were with them, Kurt was describing to us that there's a lot of parts of the Cook County Jail. He said, we go into the max and the max area of security. And you're like, great, okay. And so these guys we interacted with, like, what are they here for? He goes, most of them are being held. They're waiting for their trial for a murder charge that they have. I'm like, okay, great. Okay, so here we go. And so we jumped in with them, and I'm telling you, in some ways, I just didn't anticipate what I was going to see and experience. In the sense that these guys who've come to faith in Christ behind bars, some of them were Christians before they got there. Some of them have become Christians really through the relationship that they've had with Kurt and Krista. It's remarkable. And in a jail that's a very, very dark place, it's hard to describe how bright their light shines as believers behind bars. It's really, really remarkable to see. So I had the chance to preach to these guys. I had the chance to interact with them for a while, which is super fun. But my favorite moment is we had the chance to sit down with like 6 or 7 of these guys and just ask them questions. And I started asking questions about, like, what's it been like to have, like, a Kurt and Krista come and serve here? And they were describing that. And then I just asked the question, like, how could we serve you better? What can we do as a church that would serve you better? And some of the things they said, I expected them to say. They said things like, you guys could come more often. They said, we'd love for you to start a church here, which I thought was fascinating. How fun would it be to plant a church behind bars? I love that. We're dreaming about what that could look like. But then one of the guys said, you know what would really be helpful to us? Is if there was a way we could serve, if there was a way we could give back. Like, we love what's done for us. It's really helpful. But God's given us gifts too, and we would love the ability to contribute. So here's what they asked. They said, you know those hope packs you guys do? Do you think it'd be possible for us to help you pack those hope packs? Like, do you know the seeds you guys pack? Do you think it'd be possible for us to help you pack those seeds? And it was behind bars in a max security jail that I saw this principle lived out. These guys who are Christ followers who just recognize it isn't about self, it's about service. And one of the greatest fulfilling and meaningful parts of our entire journey is when I recognize it's not about me. It's about how God will use what he's given me for the service of others. And I was grateful that he taught me that through somebody awaiting their trial in the Cook County Jail. Some of the gifting that Paul describes in Ephesians chapter 4, he says this, now these are the gifts Christ gave to the church, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers. And it's kind of a fascinating list. But I would say that every church needs the fullness of this gift mix. And I would also say that no individual has all these 5 in of themselves. The apostles are the ones who care about what happens outside of the walls. They're kind of the spiritual entrepreneurs. They want to take new ground for the kingdom. They want to start new things. They want to be a part of new works. Again, they're not just satisfied with managing what exists. They want to expand God's kingdom in every way imaginable. Without the apostles, we would only care about ourselves. The prophets. The prophets are the ones that kind of are the truth tellers. They speak the truth. They tend to have a heart that's really connected to God. They recognize drift from God, and they call it out. Without the prophets, we drift away from what God intended, and the prophets are needed in order to pull us back to really be on course with what God desires for us. The evangelists. The evangelist cares about the people who are here, but they really care about the people who are not yet here. They care about those who are lost. They've lost their way, those who have a significant need. The evangelists are the ones that are able to take the gospel, God's good news, God's good truth, and connect it in a meaningful way to somebody who's not yet a follower of Jesus and build a spiritual bridge that they might become one. Without the evangelists, we would never be able to grow, and the kingdom would never be able to grow because the message would never be extended. The pastors, the shepherds, are the ones that do care for those who are here. Those who become a part of the body, those are the ones who are shepherded and are cared for, that their needs are met, or whatever that look like. Without the shepherds, people come, but they won't be able to stay because nobody's been able to take care of their needs. And then you have the teacher. The teacher's the one that helps make things make sense and understandable. Without the teacher, typically there is no growth. Now, when I think through these 5 different giftings, here's the truth. Every single one of you, every one of us, likely are gifted in 1, maybe 2 of these. But what that means is you've got a strength, you've got something to offer, and in of yourself, you have some major deficits that you would never be able to do on your own. And the truth is, as a church, we need us all, or we will fail to be all that God has called us to be as a church. Now, as I think about these gift mixes, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, the teachers, as I think about those, some of what we create in our group's environment reflects these gift mix. In other words, there are groups that have a little bit more of an apostolic bent to them. I just described Kurt and Krista Olson, who are expanding God's kingdom in the Cook County Jail. And the truth is, there are others like you that will be called to do similar type things, whether it's joining Kurt and Krista or whether it's whatever God puts on your heart to be a part of kingdom expanding opportunities. The truth is, without those types of groups, we cannot be all that God has for us as a church. I think about like the evangelistic type of groups. These are the groups, you heard Steph talk about it earlier, that there's golfing groups and art groups and cooking groups and running groups. What's the heartbeat of these groups? It's not just to play these things. It's because people who are far from God, who may never accept an invitation to a church service, they may come hang out with a group of Christians that are playing golf. They may hang out with a group of Christians who are doing some cooking together. And the truth is, through these relationships, we can build spiritual relationships, spiritual bridges that somebody might come to know the love and grace of God through Jesus. The truth is, without these evangelistic types of groups, we cannot be the church that God has in store for us. I think about the shepherding type of groups. There's a group that's starting this coming term that somebody had the heart, she's a widow. She has a heart for widows and what that journey's like. And she just wanted to gather other widows and walk through a journey that's a very shepherding type of journey. I think about grief groups. I think about like groups that are connected to recovery from addiction. That there are lots of shepherding groups. That's exactly what certain people need in this phase of life. Without those types of groups, we cannot be the church that God has called us to be. And I think about teaching groups. Lots of groups group around a Bible study or a book study because people want to grow in their understanding and knowledge. Do you kind of get a sense for what I'm describing? So we talk about like the groups directory and the groups directory launching. There's lots of different kinds of groups. And we need lots of different kinds of groups to be the fullness of what God had intended. We cannot be all that God has for us as a thread. We have to be woven together as a tapestry together as a church. We're better together. And so this mind shift that has to take place from me to we. There's a mindset shift that has to take place from self to service. The last mindset shift is this, that we move from weakness to strength. Weakness to strength. Ephesians chapter 4 talks about this idea of maturity. It says that then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. It reminds me of something that I read that was written by Eugene Peterson, one of my favorite authors. He said this. He said, there can be no maturity in the spiritual life, no obedience in following Jesus, no wholeness in the Christian life apart from an immersion in it, the embrace of community. And then he says this, I am not myself by myself. It's community, not the highly touted individualism of our culture. It's community that is the setting for living the Christian life. That phrase, I cannot be myself by myself. And so when Paul describes in the book of Ephesians of not being an infant, but growing in maturity, not being tossed about by the winds, we don't get there without one another. The truth is, you are plan A for the spiritual growth of the person next to you. So real quickly, turn to somebody near you and say, I need you to become more like Jesus. Go ahead and say it to him. And go ahead and respond. Go ahead and respond. I need a lot of help, so give it to me. All right, you're plan A. You're plan A. It kind of makes me think about this. I saw this not too long ago. It was very, very helpful to me. So if you think about like our lives in terms of, holy cow, I'm dropping stuff. If you think about your life in terms of self-awareness, maybe you could consider it in 4 different quadrants. Here's the first quadrant, is what I would describe as open, meaning there are things that I know about me that you know about me. So for example, I'm wearing a blue shirt. I know that, you know that. For example, I'm not a very big human. I know that, you know that. For example, I'm a pastor at Willow Creek Community Church. I know that, you know that. So there's a part of self-awareness that I know and you know. The second quadrant is what I would call hidden. This is the stuff that I know, but I keep you from knowing. It's kind of the secrets. So for example, I have a bald spot on the side of my head that I keep hair long enough so that you won't know it. I hide it from you every single week. But I'm not going to tell you about that because I don't really want you to know. Some of you won't be able to listen to anything else that I say because you're going to be distracted the rest of the talk. But there's stuff we hide, right? We all have secrets. And there's a saying in the recovery community that you're only as sick as your secrets. And the truth is, there's no healing in hiding, but it's amazing how much of life can be lived there. The next category is blind spots. This is the stuff you know, but I don't know about me. It's the stuff that I can't see. I've come to be aware of a lot of blind spots that I have. One that people have helped me become aware of is I'm a pretty even keel person, meaning I don't have really high highs, I don't have really low lows. I don't ride typically emotional roller coasters. Now, there's good in that, and that I could be pretty steady. The bad in it is what I've been told along the way is sometimes I give the impression to people that I don't care. And the truth is I'm just emotionally steady. I care deeply, but what I show, what I present is I actually don't care, and I don't care at all. It was a genuine blind spot for me. I couldn't see it. I needed somebody to help me see it because I couldn't see it. You knew it, but I didn't know it. This last category is unknown. There's stuff that you don't know about me, and I don't know about me, because there's stuff that only God knows. There is a quadrant that, really only God knows. Now, here's the beauty of community. The beauty of community is these 2 quadrants get sharpened in community. Where my growth, where my maturity, where my healing happens is what community brings to me that I wouldn't be able to bring on my own. And the truth is, if I wrap myself in really solid community, if I recognize it's not about me, and I find myself some trusted people who I can share what is hidden, I don't hold it to myself. The truth is, I can actually find healing, and this quadrant of my life becomes much smaller because of community. The truth is, if I've got a community who loves me and who loves me enough to tell me the truth, you heard it in Ephesians chapter 4. We speak the truth in love. Somebody who loves me enough to tell me the truth is willing to challenge me in my blind spots and push me to help me become what I would never become on my own. That quadrant becomes smaller. And the truth is, I can never do this on my own. Never. It requires me to integrate my life with trusted people who love God, who love me, who will help me become what I would never be able to come on my own. You and I, we desperately need one another. For us, groups are not just a program. They're not just another thing to do. I would argue they're spiritual life and death. That you cannot be yourself by yourself. We need to be together.